Welcome back to Diet in the Force. And, sometimes we like to take a look at people's hot takes and kind of dissect them to see, what's going on. This is something that's kind of popular that we hear today. So we want to talk about it, right? So this is why the Jedi Council is more responsible than Palpatine for Anakin's fall. Any quick thoughts before we hop into it?
Well, before we hop into it, make sure you subscribe and like this video and tap the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. But first and foremost, we should set the stage. This is on TikTok. This is a slideshow on TikTok, and it has over 5,000 likes. So that's the first thing I want to say. And I'm trying to prepare myself for what they're going to say. But the first thing that comes to mind is that the Jedi are not responsible for Anakin's fall. They played a part in it, right? We always like to say that Anakin is responsible for the choices he made. And George Lucas says this. Anakin has a chance right then and there to fulfill the prophecy. And he chooses the dark side. So that's my first thought. What about you?
I mean, first, we'll get into it, but if this is your reading that the Jedi are more responsible than Palpatine, you didn't understand Star Wars. I'll just say that straight up. But let's hop into the first slide.
Gosh, I'm dreading this.
They lied to him about Obi-Wan's death, teaching him that the Jedi lie for the greater good.
Is that a lesson?
No.
That wasn't a teachable moment in the series.
No, that wasn't about Anakin at all. And I think that might be the problem, is that everything has to be framed that it's about Obi-Wan goes on a secret mission
Yeah.
where he fakes his own death. Well, basically a hit is taken on him, and he uses that as an opportunity to fake his death so that he can infiltrate and get to the bottom of some things. That's when he becomes Reiko Hardeen. And he's almost successful. That has nothing to do with Anakin. That's him on a secret mission.
Rather, it's not a lie, but it's omitted because, like Choco just said,
Because
it's a
it's a mission.
secret. It's a secret mission. I think about like undercover agents. Leading a double life in that regard to complete a mission. You're not lying to anybody. It's just you need to maintain the secrecy of the mission. You need to maintain a cover, and it's sold the cover identity by having Anakin believe that Obi-Wan was dead. But
By the way, Anakin is not a Padawan here. Anakin is a Jedi Knight, meaning he is doing his own thing. They are separate. Maybe it would be messed up if Anakin was his Padawan and he didn't tell his Padawan that he was doing a mission or whatever. But not when you're a grown ass adult doing on your own separate mission. But what's more than that is Anakin is a murderer and a liar, that we
before
from
this,
yeah, from Attack of the Clones, and Palpatine is constantly lying and gaslighting him. Anakin is constantly lying to cover up his lies. So, like, to frame this against the Jedi Council is crazy. But yeah, you have any final thoughts, and then we can move to the next one.
the final thought is that in addition to what you just said, it is crazy to think that them trying to maintain cover for Obi-Wan's mission is worse than Palpatine's grooming, gaslighting, and manipulation. Palpatine literally lies to Anakin like nonstop.
And not even for the greater good.
No, he just
It's
lies.
for the sole purpose of turning him to the dark side.
And the final thought is, this wasn't a lesson. It's not like at the end of the mission, they're like, I want you to take this away from this mission, Anakin. The Jedi lie for the greater good. They order Anakin to spy on Palpatine, forcing a personal betrayal that makes Sidious feel like the only listener.
Hey, spy on your only ally. All of the Jedi are his allies. And the reason that they asked him to keep tabs on Palpatine was because he was close to Palpatine, which, by the way, they were right about Palpatine.
Well, first of all, this so far the first two slides have been written in the voice of Sidious. because because
Sheev, we know it's you. We
Sidious
know it's
is your only ally, and like it makes it seem like Palpatine did not just ask Anakin to spy on the Jedi before this.
I hope you trust me, Anakin.
Of course.
I need your help, son.
What do you mean?
I'm depending on you
For what? I don't understand.
to be the eyes, ears, and voice of the Republic.
They want me to spy on the Chancellor?
So I don't
Yeah.
get this take at all.
it's just a bad take. Obviously, this is not worse than Palpatine because A, Palpatine told them to do it first, and B, they were right about Palpatine. But
I'll-
yeah, what's next?
I also feel like our debunk of the first take, it's just a huge halo from now on that just like downstream is going to eradicate all of these takes.
The Council turns Jedi into generals, using Anakin's aggression as a tool while preaching against emotion. So the problem with this is that, well, everything.
Yes, that entire statement is wrong. And also I find it ironic that they're using this screenshot because this is a scene where Anakin just kills, I forget, Trench.
Yeah.
He just kills him cold-blooded. No one made him do it.
Yeah.
But also, as we know, it was Sidious that turned the Jedi into generals.
In more ways than one, though, because yes, he did order the act that made the Jedi, the generals. Now, I will say, the Jedi's are. It was their fault for agreeing to it, for going into it. I don't know what the alternative would be, per se, but they are responsible for their actions as generals. But it is Palpatine who does the order to make them become generals. It's Palpatine who signs an order to make Padawans get involved in the war. And the war is fake. Palpatine is controlling both sides of the war. The war only exists for the sole purpose of Palpatine gaining power and turning the Republic against the Jedi. So, like, there's nothing that the Jedi can do in the Clone Wars that is worse than creating and perpetrating the Clone Wars.
Okay, so far these takes are all in the voice of Sidious, but in addition, this take particularly is from the voice of someone who has not yet learned to accept the accountability of their actions. They're using Anakin's aggression as a tool. Anakin's doing all this stuff with agency. Palpatine did integrate the Jedi Order into the Grand Army. Anakin, by proxy, Anakin gets turned into a general. But
the Jedi don't want him to use his aggression,
right?
They're always telling him not to.
How does that result in the council using Anakin's aggression? All of the other masters on the council are generals themselves, fighting on different fronts. No one
Not
is
only that,
holding
but
a
the
gun to his head.
The Jedi do not ever preach against emotion.
Well, let's okay. That's important because we make these videos all the time. And we'll try to make this as succinct as possible. The Jedi teaching is about controlling your emotions, not letting the emotions control you. And we cite Anakin in Attack of the Clones when he says obsession, possession is forbidden, but compassion, unconditional love, that stuff is encouraged by the Jedi. I don't know when the zeitgeist changed, when everyone started thinking that the Jedi was like, no, we want you to walk around like zombies. Don't display emotion. Don't have feelings. Don't do any of this. Even in the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan says, it's not that we're not allowed to have these feelings. It's natural. So let's get it through our thick heads. The Jedi don't preach non-emotion or no emotion. They just...
By the way, we literally never see a Jedi who doesn't show emotion.
And we never see a Jedi say, no emotion. No emotion. And finally, the Jedi code that says there is no emotion. That is to connect with the Force. Because as soon as you connect with the Force using emotion, that is a path to the dark side. Okay? Next one. The Council expels Ahsoka and only backtracks when it costs them nothing. He watches them betray the person who believes in him most. No. Oh, gosh. This is...
I feel like people watched this arc in the background while they were on their phone.
This is one of those things where the audience thinks that everyone is the audience, right? To them, first and foremost, the evidence is stacked against Ahsoka, right? And then they have the military breathing down their necks saying, expel Ahsoka. She's going to be tried with a military tribunal. And handling things internally would look biased. And so, yeah, Obi-Wan says we should stand with Ahsoka, and Mace says, I hear you and I understand, but opposing the Senate here could be seen as treason. It's treason then.
I mean, yeah, she does get expelled from the order, but for, like you're saying, Tarkin spells it out directly. Military personnel died and civilians died. This is not something that the Jedi can do their own internal trial for, right? Just like if, a priest gets in trouble, you don't want the church to be like, we'll handle it in house. We don't need to get the authorities involved. You probably are like, hell no.
They capitulated. Essentially, they saw that standing
They
against
capitulated,
them,
but it was a direct threat of, if you do not hand her over, then you're considering yourselves enemies of the Republic.
Yeah, and this is the nuance that we try to point out to anyone that has this take. Yes, so I would fault the Jedi for capitulating to this, but at the end of the day, it's not their fault for having to expel Ahsoka in the first place, because they're being pressured by the Senate and by the military. And then in the background, Yoda's like, can you prove her innocence? To Anakin, and Anakin is the one investigating under the orders of the Council. So it's not like they gave up on Ahsoka. They just said, this is what we have to do for now to keep up the image, right?
They also ensured that Ahsoka would have a fair trial.
Yes.
I mean, my hot take is, in this matter, they actually made all the right decisions. And honestly, I think it's crazy that people will put more blame on the Council than they do on Barriss, the person that frames
Yes.
her, who literally blows up the temple and kills people. On top of that, if Anakin wasn't so reckless, if Anakin didn't teach Ahsoka to be so reckless, then she would have got off scot-free.
Honestly,
Like,
yes.
Barriss was only able to frame her because he knew that Ahsoka, she knew that Ahsoka would break out of her cell, would try to follow her to this location so she can get more, deeper evidence against her, into that location for deeper evidence against her. Like, honestly, if she stayed in her cell, what would have happened is they would have been like, oh, why are these guys like killed outside of your door? And she'd be like, I don't know, I haven't left my cell. And they're like, well, then obviously it's not you.
To put it bluntly, Ahsoka fell into all of the traps. Oftentimes, fans will watch this arc thinking that all of the characters have all of the knowledge that we do as the audience. We see Ahsoka's innocent. We know, yeah, she's innocent. She hasn't done anything. We can see that someone is choking someone in front of her using the Force while she's not doing anything. But what that looks like on the camera is that Ahsoka is killing the guards. And this is the information they have to work with. Now, when the Council votes to expel, Yoda also says, not in complete agreement we are, right? But that's how the Council works. They got to vote for it, right? So the whole thing about the entire Council expelling Ahsoka, it's just they had to vote on the matter. They had to weigh the pros and cons of going against the Senate, especially during a wartime. The odds are stacked against them in terms of optics, in terms of credibility and reputation in the Senate, because at the end of the day, if we watch the entire prequels and Clone Wars, it all comes down to it's treason then. And that he
I
could
just love
have
how they only backtrack when it cost them nothing. Like you mean after the trial was over and they found the guilty culprit? Like what?
I feel like people don't realize that at any point Palpatine could have raised issue with the Jedi and said they're committing treason. Right. And so
Yeah.
there's a fine line where like a
He was
balancing
waiting
act.
for an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Anakin begged for help. Literally, the Grandmaster gave him a lecture.
Anakin literally did not beg for help.
No, he did not.
Premonitions. These visions you have.
They're of pain, suffering, death.
Yourself you speak of, or someone you know?
Someone.
Close to you?
Yes.
Careful you must be when sensing the future, Anakin. The fear of loss is a path to the dark side.
See, this is why I say this is written in the voice of someone who has not yet come to terms with their decisions and Anakin's decisions and why he made those decisions. It's in the voice of someone who thinks that Anakin is completely justified in everything and is looking for someone to blame.
Yeah, I feel like this is written by like a a Gen Z boy that consumes red pill content. Like,
I mean,
it's everyone else's fault.
I hesitate to assume it's Gen Z. There could be some older millennials out there that...
That's true. My point is this feels red pill coded to me.
Yeah. So the only information that Yoda has to go off of is
They're of pain, suffering, death.
Yourself you speak of, or someone you know?
Someone.
Close to you?
Yes.
Yoda only knows that someone's going to die. So he says, don't be afraid. Death is a natural part of life.
Which, by the way, if he followed Yoda's advice, Padme wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
And then the other part is like, it's weird that people will blame Yoda. The Grandmaster gave him a lecture, right? Obviously, if you don't give him any information, he's going to give you some boilerplate spiel because he doesn't actually know what's going on. But more importantly, Palpatine was lying to him. Like, Anakin wasn't there for an answer. Anakin wanted something specific, and he was never going to get that.
We need to backtrack to this information as well that he doesn't have. I do fault Yoda for one thing in this scene. The scene ends with Anakin saying, "I won't let this vision come true, Master." And I fault Yoda for not going, wait. Hold on. What exactly are you going to do to keep this vision? Bring Ahsoka in here. She had a vision of Padme getting assassinated. What did I tell her? Oh, be careful with how you respond to visions, because always in motion is the future. Multiple futures, and I like to point out that scene because it is Master and Padawan going to Yoda for literally the same issue. But Ahsoka goes,
I'm sure now that it is Senator Amidala who is in danger.
Senator Amidala, you say?
Yes, Master. I've seen it in my visions.
Choose you must how to respond to your visions. But remember, always in motion is the future, and many possible futures there are.
You gotta figure out.
Tells him what's actually happening.
Yeah. You gotta figure out what's gonna happen, what how to respond to this vision. With Anakin, is like
Someone.
Death is a natural part of life. Don't be afraid of it. I can't believe that's the number one. Honestly, because I can think of 5 other ways that the Jedi are complicit in Anakin's fall, but they are not more at fault than Palpatine. Palpatine is the prime mover of Anakin's downfall.
Also, there's the thing I always say about it that drives me absolute nuts is that people are like, well, if the Jedi just did this, then this thing Palpatine said wouldn't have been effective. And you're like, maybe so. But if the Jedi did this different thing, Palpatine would have said something different. Nothing about him is true. Everything he's saying is the sole purpose is to drive a wedge between Anakin and the Jedi. So if the Jedi said the opposite of everything that they said, Palpatine would have just flip-flopped to whatever he needed to separate them.
Which is why Palpatine starts very, very young. Like he meets Anakin when he's 9 and he's like, we'll watch you very, very closely. And the very first thing he says, the very first time Anakin kind of seeks out counsel from Palpatine is like, the Jedi don't respect you. They're afraid of your power. They don't trust you.
Yeah. Also, I mean, he also subtly is like blackmailing Anakin as well. Remember what you told me about the Tuskens and what you did to them, and like remember, doing little things to remind him, like I have your secrets, my dude. Like again, if you watch the movies and come out of them thinking that the Jedi are the bad guys, then you didn't understand the films. I know that's gonna sound gatekeepy, but like that
needs to be said.
That is an objective fact. George Lucas literally lives his life like the Jedi because he believes it's the right way. He's never intended their way to be considered wrong or bad. They ultimately failed in their charge to protect the Republic from the Sith, right? They failed in their charge. That happened.
I mean, there's a couple.
This slideshow said that they are more responsible for Anakin's downfall than Palpatine, and that is objectively not true.
Yeah, I do want to really quickly list out some things that they're complicit in, just to show you guys that we're not just glazing the Jedi. They could have responded better to Anakin's turmoil in Attack of the Clones. I think Yoda is the one that actually senses the slaughter. I don't think he knows what exactly happens. He just we hear Qui-Gon say Anakin no, which is probably a voice that is with Anakin's side of the scene and not something that Yoda hears, but Yoda senses he's trouble. And they could have done more to reach out to Anakin, especially when they clearly acknowledge that things are bothering him. This is something that the Jedi often fail with, is kind of acknowledging that some of their students or some of their knights are having issues with things. But of course, this is all this is all in the theater of the war, that they're being stretched thin and they have other things.
That's what I was going to say is even that I kind of got to push back against, because in that moment they got bigger fish to fry. Like in that moment, Obi-Wan is like, going through some stuff, and there's a secret army, and then they go into this battle, and a lot of Jedi die in that battle. And I can, sure, maybe he should have checked in on Anakin, but that's more Obi-Wan's job than anyone else. Not the leader, know. Also, how often do you think Yoda gets that? This person's in trouble. That person had a bad day. That guy has indigestion. I don't know.
So the flip side of this, right? And this is why we like to have these nuanced conversations. It's not really this black and white thing that you can like lobby at one side or the other. The other side of this is Anakin could have asked for help multiple times, a lot more help. We have a story of Elzar Mann in the High Republic who recognizes his brush with the dark side, his temptations. And he's like, yeah, this isn't good. I need to ask for help. And he gets help. He gets therapy. And he trains with another Jedi to confront this darkness. So Anakin could have asked for more help. Perhaps the masters, given how much time they had to work around what was happening in the galaxy, they could have
I mean,
probably
how do you
reached
think
out.
Anakin would respond though if someone pried into his
He
life
would have
unprompted?
lied. He would have lied.
And ultimately, that's where I come. You cannot save people who don't want to be saved. I have trouble putting that responsibility on the Jedi because, at this point in time, when you are an adult, your coworker can't make you go to therapy. Your boss can't make you go to therapy,
Yeah, and I mean, and during this time, and particularly in this scene, he is a knight, and knights are fully independent.
Something I also will add unequivocally is if you are unable to hold Anakin responsible for his own actions, don't tell me he deserved the rank of master. If you are in control of yourself, you can't be a master. I'm sorry. You can't hold both of those positions at the same time.
And finally, this is why when it comes to the Jedi's fault in their downfall, we always say hubris, right? It's never about what they failed to do with Anakin, what they failed to prevent, what they what what Palpatine did to Anakin veiled as the Jedi's fault. The Jedi were at fault for having the hubris to think that they were too big to fail, that
Yeah.
that the Sith had not returned in the beginning of the video, in the beginning of the prequels, and of course their inability to counter the darkness that was clouding their vision. But of course,
Yeah.
this is all on top of the shoulders of being in a war. So this is why we always go back to Palpatine, because while the Jedi were complicit and were at fault for not being able to fight against all of this, Palpatine made sure they couldn't because of the war, stretched them thin. And we can see this in the prequels. In Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi are starting to realize they know there's a Sith Lord. They know the darkness is clouding their ability to see, and so they start the hunt. But by that time, it's too late, and that's why Palpatine's designs were so freaking, for lack of a better term, good. They were so good, but evil.
Also, I mean, I'll say for me, their biggest failures were two things. Well, it's really one thing, but it manifests itself two ways. Is is attachment. They got attached to life as it was,
Yeah.
right? They got attached to the status quo. And by doing that, they ended up um the Senate was corrupt, right? It was corrupt without Palpatine. Palpatine made it worse, but their alignment with them allowed their rigidity, allowed their stance to be used by the Senate as a weapon that kept the status quo, which was corruption, right? That was a big issue. And so you can call it complacency, or what have you, but you know, what the answer is, I don't know. Obviously, I don't think they should have been involved. Getting involved in politics for them is not the answer. But they needed to wake up to see how they were being used.
Yeah, and the big example of that, one of the things that manifested out of that was what we talked about in this video, was the Ahsoka trial. You know, the whole council was like, well, Obi-Wan said we need to stand with Ahsoka, and Mace and Yoda were relatively in agreement, but they had the Senate in the back of their minds, like, we can't go against the Senate. This is going to be seen as an act of aggression or act of opposition. If they were not so embroiled in the body politic, they could make that decision, be like, nah, we'll see if Ahsoka's actually innocent and we'll investigate ourselves. But because they were like, we don't want to make ourselves the enemy of the Senate, they had to make those decisions.
I do kind of feel like Dooku made that impossible, though. Like, Dooku taught them that no matter how much you trusted this guy, you grew up with him, you knew him, he's not capable of this stuff, but he was.
Yeah.
And by that point in the Clone Wars, I don't think you could confidently say that anyone is above,
you couldn't
Fallen.
confidently say that anyone was a political idealist, not a murderer.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Again, like Choco said, watch the prequels again, and have the ability to separate the faults in each individual person in the prequels, because it's not all on one person, but one person did manipulate it all, and that was Palpatine.
And recognize that Anakin is a grown-ass man who knows right and wrong, and made a choice actively and stood by his choice for an additional 23 years.
Anyways, that'll do it for this video. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any videos. That's it. On to the next one.
Peace.